Episode 10, Joseph Smith's Book of Mormon Translation, Part 1. Welcome back to Hidden and Distorted History of the Church, where we uncover the lesser-known truths about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the Mormons. My goal is to reveal the authentic historical facts behind the Mormon Church. Recap. In the previous episode, we exposed the true events that led Joseph Smith and Emma to allegedly flee to Harmony, debunking the Church's incorrect narrative. This week, we'll dive into Joseph Smith's so-called translation of the plates and reveal how the Church misleads us about the actual sequence of events. Part 1, Emma's role. Church members are often led to believe that Joseph Smith had only two scribes during the supposed translation of the Book of Mormon, Martin Harris and Oliver Cowdery. However, many LDS scholars, historians, and leaders conveniently overlook the fact that Emma Smith was Joseph's first scribe, starting in late 1827, several months before Martin Harris became involved. Why is Emma frequently omitted as her husband's first scribe? BYU scholar David A. Lefevre addressed this in his article, Emma Smith and the Translation of the Book of Mormon, stating, "But there is no evidence of Emma acting as a scribe in the manuscripts as we have them now." Granted, the original manuscript is not extant, as much of it was destroyed by water as it rested for many years in the cornerstone of the Nauvoo house. But if Emma was translating before Oliver Cowdery arrived in April 1829, which is what is indicated, then we could expect the earliest portions to be in her handwriting, but they are in Oliver's. The obvious answer was that she must have been a scribe for the first lost manuscript, the Book of Lehi, as Joseph called it in the preface to the 1830 Book of Mormon. But histories I read, including the excellent Rough Stone Rolling by Richard Bushman, don't discuss Emma as a scribe for the manuscript, just Martin Harris. This omission presents significant issues that demand our attention. Why does the LDS Church not acknowledge Emma's role in transcribing the Book of Lehi, or what members commonly refer to as the lost 116 pages? Church leaders and historians imply that the entire 116 pages were solely transcribed by Martin Harris, effectively erasing Emma's contributions from the narrative. The next issue we face is the LDS Church's narrative that Martin Harris had already transcribed the 116 pages by the time he went to Charles Anthon with the characters Joseph Smith provided. In the previous episode, we demonstrated that Harris received the characters directly from Smith, who wrote them down for him, contradicting Lefevre's implication that Emma may have been involved. In the LDS-produced film Witnesses of the Book of Mormon, Harris is shown writing down Smith's dictations as he begins demanding proof of the Book of Mormon's authenticity. This portrayal leads us to believe that the Anthon meeting had not yet occurred, which, as I demonstrated in the last video, is accurate. However, this again creates significant discrepancies in the Church's timeline. While we cannot confirm whether it was Joseph or Emma who wrote down the proposed Reformed Egyptian characters, it is clear that Emma significantly contributed to the writing of the Book of Lehi, also known as the 116 missing pages. Martin Harris himself stated that he transcribed about 1/3 of the first part of the translation. This implies that Emma must have written the remaining 2/3 of that manuscript before it was destroyed by Harris's wife. The Church severely downplays Emma's role in the translation process, despite evidence from Joseph Knight Sr., who financially supported the Smiths during this time. Lefevre, citing Dan Vogel, provides further insight. Even Joseph Knight Sr., who frequently traveled between his house in Colesville and Harmony during this period, noted that his wife, Emma, would sometimes write a little for him, yet still stated that Martin Harris wrote the 116 pages of the first part of the Book of Mormon. Before moving on, it's crucial to address another misleading claim by the Church: Joseph Smith's supposed ignorance and lack of education. The Church often portrays Joseph as an uneducated farm boy, yet this narrative ignores several key facts. Joseph's great-uncle was a minister and professor at Dartmouth College, an expert in Hebrew who authored a Hebrew grammar book. Hiram Smith, Joseph's brother, attended a school on the Dartmouth campus, receiving a substantial religious education. These facts contradict the Church's portrayal of Joseph as lacking the educational background necessary to produce the Book of Mormon. This portrayal is used to enhance claims of divine inspiration, Yet the reality suggests Joseph had access to significant religious and linguistic knowledge through his family. There is no doubt that Emma was Joseph Smith's first scribe. In their co-authored article, Joseph and Emma Smith's Home, Mark L. Staker and Curtis Ashton confirm, Joseph's first limited efforts had begun in December 1827 before the move to the house, but they continued in 1828. Emma helped her husband again briefly when he resumed work in 1829. Emma's contributions are undeniable. She began assisting Joseph in December 1827 and continued until February 1828 when Martin Harris took over as scribe. Harris himself stated that he only wrote 1/3 of the 116 pages, implying that Emma transcribed the remaining 2/3 during this period. Despite this evidence, the church minimizes Emma's role, leading members and potential converts to believe that Harris was the sole scribe. This deliberate omission distorts the historical truth and misleads the faithful. Part 2. Martin Harris scribes. Harris, according to the LDS Church, did not become Smith's scribe until February of 1828, and that by June of the same year they had produced 116 pages of translations on the Book of Mormon. Isaac Hale tells us it was December 1827, 2 months prior, that the translations started. An interview with Hale revealed a striking episode. Soon after this incident, Martin Harris confided that he needed a greater witness. He recounted discussing this with Joseph Smith, who told him he could neither show the plates directly nor dare to. Instead, Joseph proposed going into the woods where the plates were hidden. Joseph instructed Harris to follow his tracks in the snow, find the plates, and examine them himself. Harris later reported that he followed these directions but was unable to find the plates, leaving him still unsatisfied. The following day, I visited Joseph Smith Jr.'s residence, where he and Harris were engaged in translating the Book of Mormon. They each had a written document before them, and among the words was, "My servant seeketh a greater witness, but no greater witness can be given him." In the last episode, we discussed how Martin Harris insisted he could not continue working on the Book of Mormon without confirmation of its truth, prompting Joseph Smith to send him to Charles Anthon. Although we didn't delve deeply into the Anthon affair then, we'll address it shortly. However, Isaac Hale's account reveals that Smith and Harris were already engaged in translating the Book of Mormon prior to the Anthon meeting. This supports the point made in the previous video. The church's narrative about Harris seeking genuine proof was misleading. In reality, Harris was not searching for objective validation, but rather for any confirmation that aligned with his own inclinations. Charles Anthon discredited the characters on the piece of paper that Joseph and Harris created, stating, "I told the man at once that he was imposed upon and that the writing was mere trash." Despite this, Joseph Smith reinforced Harris's belief by citing a Bible verse, claiming it stated that no man could read a closed book, thus validating the Book of Mormon. Harris, eager for confirmation of his own beliefs, fell for Smith's assertion, accepting it as proof of the book's authenticity. Smith, Harris, and other church leaders leveraged Anthon's disparaging comments to publicly bolster the Book of Mormon's legitimacy. This forced Anthon to issue a statement, in which he concluded with a fervent plea, "I have provided you with a complete account of what I know about the origins of Mormonism, and I must ask you, as a personal favor, to publish this letter immediately if you find my name cited again by these wretched fanatics." Before we proceed, we need to step back in the timeline to set the stage for what comes next. According to Larry C. Porter, but even in harmony problems began to surface with Isaac Hale himself. When shown the box in which the gold plates had been placed, Isaac said that he was allowed to feel the weight of the box, but he was not permitted to see the plates. He then declared to Joseph, "If there was anything in my house of that description which I could not be allowed to see, he must take it away." During the supposed translation of the 116 pages, Smith maintained a curtain between himself and Martin Harris, preventing Harris from ever seeing the plates Smith claimed to be translating from. Isaac Hale revealed that the plates were not even in the house but hidden in the woods. The manner in which he pretended to read and interpret was identical to how he searched for buried treasure. With a stone in his hat covering his face, while the book of plates was hidden in the woods. According to official LDS Church teachings, Smith used the Urim and Thummim to translate the Book of Mormon. Former LDS President Joseph Fielding Smith asserted, while some writers claim that the prophet Joseph Smith used a seer stone at times during the translation of the record, and while he did possess such a stone, there is no authentic statement in church history that confirms its use for this purpose. The information is all hearsay, and I personally do not believe the stone was used in the translation. This conclusion is supported by the statement of the Lord to the brother of Jared in Ether 3:22-24, Doctrines of Salvation 3:225. In the October 2015 Ensign magazine, a church-owned publication for its members, there is a substantial article on Smith and his use of seer stones. The article states, the young Joseph Smith accepted such familiar folk ways of his day, including the idea of using seer stones to view lost or hidden objects. Since the biblical narrative showed God using physical objects to focus people's faith or communicate spiritually in ancient times, Joseph and others assumed the same for their day. Joseph's parents, Joseph Smith Sr. and Lucy Mack Smith, affirmed the family's immersion in this culture and their use of physical objects in this way, and the villagers of Palmyra and Manchester, New York, where the Smiths lived, sought out Joseph to find lost objects before he moved to Pennsylvania in late 1827. According to Fair LDS, Joseph was given a set of Nephite interpreters along with the gold plates from which the Book of Mormon was produced. In addition, Joseph already possessed and utilized several seer stones. Although Joseph began translating the Book of Mormon using the Nephite interpreters, he later switched to using one of his seer stones to complete the translation. Critics, typically those who reject Mormonism but still believe in God, reject the idea that God would approve the use of an instrument for translation that had previously been used for money digging. The conclusion that Joseph used a magical or occult stone to assist in the translation of the Book of Mormon is entirely dependent upon one's own preconception that the use of such an instrument would not be acceptable by God. Believers, on the other hand, ought not to take issue with a distinction between one set of seer stones versus another. As Brant Gardner notes, regardless of the perspective from which we tell the story, the essential fact of the translation is unchanged. How was the Book of Mormon translated? As Joseph continually insisted, the only real answer, from any perspective, is that it was translated by the gift and power of God. The LDS Church is trying to justify Smith's use of the seer stone, the same one he was charged with using for disorderly conduct shortly before the translation. For decades, the Church taught that only the Urim and Thummim were used, and led members to believe the plates were present during translation. Brant Gardner's claim that the essential fact of the translation is unchanged is flawed. The narrative shifts from a Judeo-Christian context to one rooted in occult or magical practices. Martin and Joseph worked on the alleged translation until June 1828, producing 116 pages of text known as the Book of Lehi, the first part of the supposed plates. Once this section was completed, Harris requested to return to Palmyra with the plates to show his skeptical wife. Smith refused, but after Harris petitioned 3 more times, Smith reluctantly agreed to let him show the manuscript, on the condition that Harris swore an oath to reveal it to only 5 people. Conclusion. To wrap up, we've explored significant aspects of Emma Smith's overlooked role as Joseph Smith's first scribe, and examined discrepancies in the Church's narrative regarding the translation of the Book of Mormon. The evidence shows that Emma contributed significantly to the translation process before Martin Harris became involved, challenging the Church's portrayal of Harris as the sole scribe. We've also highlighted the Church's shifting stance on translation methods, from claiming the use of the Urim and Thummim to justifying the use of a seer stone, a tool previously linked to Smith's dubious activities. This shift underscores a broader issue with the consistency and transparency of the Church's historical claims. In the next video, we'll further dissect the story of the 116 lost pages known as the Book of Lehi and uncover more about the true nature of these missing texts. Stay tuned as we continue to unravel the complexities of this pivotal period in LDS history. Please watch for future videos, and thank you so kindly for watching. This is the Ex-Mormon Informant signing off for the day.